Recording.
Okay, so we're all recording. I guess we're live then. Yeah, welcome to the second episode of Technically Managing. We survived the first episode in the podcast release. That was exciting.
Yep, it was.
Like, what was your thoughts when that whole thing happened? Because so two things before we get back into the like on the road to product management or whatever we're calling it. Like, two big things happened. We released the first episode because we recorded that a couple no, we still recorded that like 2 weeks ago, but we also had the Telky Tech release too. So
Mhm.
we got to like promote both those things simultaneously.
Yep. So I feel like I heard from people that I didn't think were going to watch it, but I did get some feedback from it. And a lot of people really liked it. So that's awesome. Um, I I haven't heard it. Like, we didn't really edit that video. We left it as is, right? So I didn't really listen to it or anything. And I don't think I plan on doing it because when you like hear your own voice and stuff, or sometimes you might be like, wow, why did I say that, Or I don't know. I just don't want to hear it again,
Yeah. I've gotten a lot more comfortable listening to my own voice since like joining Oracle in general.
Mhm.
Because like we also had to record ourselves as solution engineers. I
Yep.
used to hate it though. I still don't like it, but the podcast like was pretty scary because the last time I checked, the YouTube video has 44 views, which
Wow.
is pretty good for like a fresh new channel where we don't have any kind of like audience before. Have you checked like taken a look at the download numbers like lately?
Yeah, so it looks like we're at 44. And to be honest, like we've only posted about it once, so I think
Mhm.
it's pretty good, to be honest.
Yes. So we're close to like 100 listens for the first episode.
Mhm.
That was funny because I like literally had like family reach out to me and just like coworkers and even people who I didn't know that well. They're like, "Oh, that was like so cool. Like I love the first episode." And even just because I did like the Telky Tech release too, I was
Mhm.
getting a lot around the same time, but part of my brain was like terrified because I remember when we listened through the first episode to edit it, and it was mostly just like taking out the pauses for the bathroom break. We didn't really say anything that we were worried about, but I
Exactly.
like completely forgot most of what we've talked
Me
about
too.
since then. So when people are
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, I liked it," I'm like, "What did you like? What did you not like?" I have no idea. Like, it's so weird just having people comment about something that you put
Yeah.
out there, which like you do not have like a precise active memory on.
Exactly. Yes. I feel like we did talk about a lot of things, so
Mhm.
um like for example, someone told me that they really like the fact that like we're PMs that don't have the technical background, but we're trying to get there. How we spoke about it's important to be able to explain like a technical term to someone that's not technical, because if they're able to understand it, like everyone's able to understand it, stuff like that, that sometimes we might think that because we're not technical we are like it's kind of like our weakness, but in
Mhm.
reality it's really not, because we're able to see things in a different way, right? That maybe technical people miss, right? So they liked that, they
Yeah,
us highlighting that.
because like I do think as like a disclaimer for the podcast, if you didn't like assume this already, like we're not coming out here being like, oh, we're these like experts on product management who know everything in our long tenured career of almost a year. Like part of this is just based off of like we both kind of came with the background of as we're learning, our generation very much likes to rely on the internet and like just not not professionally made. I don't mean that in terms of not good production value, but just like people talking about their experiences as people and like with all of their flaws, perspectives, and all of that. Because like that's where you kind of get those like little nuggets of wisdom that help you in your own journey. And like both
Mhm.
of us were like saying how, yeah, like our road to Oracle and stuff was like looking up just YouTube and like
Mhm.
TikTok tech and just like Googling all these people, like all this stuff, and like running into these different people and blogs and all that. So it's kind of just like through the act of discussing these things and kind of bouncing ideas, some are going to be more foundationally secure on than others. Like it helps our career and also just like helps, I think, other people kind of get in the brain space of like what it looks like to be young in this field and
Yep.
all that. But like I do think on the whole, like us not being technical thing, it's something that I'm having kind of an interesting, I would say, like relationship with, because
Mhm.
when I first came into Oracle, and like we can get into this when we get back to like the our time in solution engineering,
Yeah.
but I've like always been very insecure about my tech knowledge because I don't have any tech degrees. Like I was finance and business analytics in school and everything was self-taught or learned on the job. But like I was like in a couple like email and like Slack threads where people one of the products that I'm focused on is SQL CL Liquibase. So for like those who aren't familiar with working with an Oracle database, I think they like when you call it SQL. I always they don't like when it's when is it they prefer when we say SQL and one SQL? Do you know what I'm talking about? We use one
Honestly,
for
I don't know, but I think in Oracle, I hear more SQL than SQL. But in
okay.
school, I used to hear SQL a lot more. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it's a preference thing. I don't
I'm
know.
sure someone will correct me
Please
on
correct.
my team or otherwise, but it's either whether it's pronounced SQL or SQL, basically the letters are SQL, and that's like the language that you use to communicate with a database.
SQL
So
query
we have,
language.
yeah, so we have a command line tool for basically like sending commands to your Oracle database from just directly from the command line, and that's called SQL CL. We have a feature in it now called Liquibase, and it's based on the open source Liquibase platform, but we kind of like threw our own stuff on top of it and add like all these extra features. And basically, like what it does is automate a lot of like your database change work. So kind of like without going too deep into that right now, Jeff, my manager, has been having me focus on a lot of projects surrounding SQL CL Liquibase and like some like emails and Slacks are going around. We're like, oh yeah, like joking, like our local like Liquibase guru Zach. And like hearing that just from my kind of like background of my tech brain, I'm like, oh, that's like a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But then when I think about, I'm like, I've been working a lot with Liquibase like lately. Like I do kind of like know a decent amount about it now. So I think that is like one of those things that like with our job, it is hard because especially being in like the database product management organization at Oracle, there's some like really impressive tenured people here. And there is a bit of an age gap between like the kind of old guard and like the new guard they're grooming. And like because a lot of our coworkers are like 20 plus years on us and like in our career it's like very easy, I feel like, at least for me, to dismiss the stuff that I do. But there are also times that you kind of like stop and you're like, no, like I'm actually doing like a pretty good job with the stuff I am like working on around this, and like I have put like my hours into it, so it's like I am kind of becoming a bit of like an expert, obviously, while keeping that mindset of there's always like room to grow.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I definitely feel like I came into this job, like even as a solution engineer with this imposter syndrome, even when
Mm-hmm.
I was presenting, I literally thought I didn't know what I was talking about. And sometimes you do need to give yourself a little credit, like you need to be like, okay, like I'm presenting on this, so I know something, like at least starting from I know something. Um,
Yeah.
because like as you said, like same in my team, right? Like we just had like two people that, have been in Oracle for 25 years. They were celebrating their 25-year anniversary. And you look at them, like the way they present everything, it's more of like, wow, like they do it so naturally, compared to like maybe me that I take longer to get ready, or I take longer to understand different terms, right? So yes, I feel like I've learned a lot, and a lot of the things that I've learned, I actually would love to get some experience. Maybe we should invite someone to our podcast that is very technical, because I would
Mm-hmm.
love to see whether they learn this in school, right? Because I feel like a lot of the things, like you learn in school, like you learn them, but like when you're trying to apply them to the job, they're completely different, you know, or I guess maybe Oracle works different or other companies work different. So, you know, like it's nice to have that, but like when you come into a job, sometimes everything changes, you know, and you just have to start from zero and learn everything. That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about, you know, being able to show that we're able to learn fast at our
Yeah.
job.
And like I think that's like one of those things from school, which is kind of like a habit we have to unlearn, is there's definitely you come out of like academia and especially like high level US academia, and they kind of like give you this intrinsic assumption that if you're like not careful, you might not notice, where it's about like this like idea that they're like these all-knowing experts out there,
Mhm.
and it's like a different thing, like maybe one day you'll get there after like decades of experience kind of thing, but it almost kind of feels like this like there's this like imaginary wall separating you from them, but like really in reality it's like you can't really have that mindset because it doesn't make you getting to a point of like expertise and active journey that you're a part of, where like at least for like me personally, like one of my kind of person like one of my like I guess you'd call it mindsets is just like there's nothing special about say like the people who are kind of like referred to as like experts, and yeah, I'm not going to be like egotistical, and of course I don't think I'm at say someone who knows a lot about something's level, but
Mhm.
you can kind of like push yourself and learn things a lot quicker than you can, and like once you learn something, the kind of like at least like mindset around that is you can like talk about that because like you know it pretty fairly certain. Like the name of the game is just kind of being honest with yourself, like, hey, what am I pretty rock solid to talk about? And
Mhm.
what am I a bit more less sure about, but I may have like some good points around as long as I give the disclaimer and like what is just kind of like outside of my arena at the moment. And it's kind of just like working, like build up that repertoire.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think sometimes like I feel like being an expert also kind of like plays against your advantage because you might miss like little things, you know, like little details that you would take a look at when you're seeing things with a fresh mind, you know, where you don't really
Mhm.
have a foundation or anything like that, you know? So yeah, I think overall there are some pros on us being like, you know, totally new to technology and bringing our perspective and creativity, right? To like show people how things work. And with technology, you never stop learning, right? Like they're always changing. You're always having like updates and stuff like that. So overall, like just having the skill to like be open-minded to learning things from zero, I think that's like a really good skill to have.
Mhm. And that's like something that is really cool about at least like what I've been seeing at Oracle, like the interplay between generations,
Mhm.
because you have like your super, like you're talking about, like you're more like senior people who have all this like lived experience of knowledge and like expertise that they've like accumulated over their career. But one of the things about having expertise and like a big base of knowledge is you kind of like work out systems and like personal tools and things that kind of like give you a repertoire of a way to handle situations. And like that's
Mhm.
something that you refine over a long period of time. Like one of the kind of problems with that is I feel like you kind of, I'm trying to think of like the right word, like you get used to doing things like you get a repetitions in, but once you get repetitions in, you kind of formed a bit of like a fixed way of thinking. Whereas, like, say, like younger people were much better with change because we kind of have to like rely more like instinctually and like as we go because we don't have like a history to draw back on. Like, does that make sense? Like at
Yeah,
all what I'm like getting at there? Like I'm just like trying to kind
actually,
of yeah, pinpoint those like factors that lead to like younger people being better at kind of picking out
mhm.
change in general versus like that like Asian wisdom type thing.
Yeah. So I think I told you about it some time ago, but I did read the Rookie Smart book, right? That Giant made me read.
Mhm.
And yeah, like we actually presented to him about, you know, like what we discovered and stuff like that. And of course, like, like it's not like we agreed with everything in the book, right? Because basically the book talks about, it was written by someone in Oracle, right? That started Oracle University. And it talks about how, like rookies, we're like smart because we're like really hard workers. We kind of like think that we have to catch up with like the expert people in our team, so like we work really hard. We're always open to learning and, basically trying new things because we have nothing to lose compared to like experts, right? That are a little more, they already have their system and they're not really that open to trying new things because, like they might fail and they have way more responsibility than us, right? So I
Mhm.
think that's a really good book to read. Even though I don't always agree that, like I don't think there's always like a rookie, like a rookie that is always willing to put in the work. There's some other people that are not, like I don't want to say as hard worker, but maybe that's not their priority. They just do their job and that's it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying like that's a possibility. And then there's experts that are always like open to like giving people a new try or trying new methods or, just exploring different ways of doing things. So it doesn't always apply, but I do think that there's a pattern, right, between rookies and experts, I guess.
Yeah. I'm trying to think before we get back to the road to PM. Any other thoughts on the whole just like release and stuff? Like, because on my point or on my side of things, because like I had the whole big Telky Tech release, like that was a pretty cool experience. I
Mm-hmm.
believe I'm up to like 400 unique visitors on the Telky Tech site. So this is like
Wow.
unique IP addresses, not people visiting
Like
multiple
repeats.
times.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just like on the social stuff, it's been a really cool experience. Like, just want to kind of say before we got like too into things, like how grateful I am with all that, just because it was something that I was like putting myself out there a lot, and I did like all the art on the site myself, and that was something that was pretty funny because like I was very heads down, not public with any of that. And you're like, okay, here's my website. I made 1,000 little drawings of myself. I hope you don't think I'm crazy. And that this whole thing kind of like works together in a way that makes sense. But I got like a lot of like messages from people just like being so encouraging and supportive and like saying how cool it looks and all of that and like how they like love the articles so far and see where it goes. So between that and the podcast, definitely excited to see how this stuff continues to evolve.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say, people, if you haven't checked check out like his website, is really cool. Like you guys should definitely like my favorite part is your story. Like I
Mhm.
love those little drawings. Like I love everything about it. So, if someone's listening and they haven't checked out the website, Talkie Tech, definitely, go check it out.
Yeah, it's just my last name, Telke, Talke dot tech. Like there's no dot com, like it's dot tech just to make it easy to find. But yeah, so on that note, are we ready to get back into how we got into PM? I think the last point
Yep.
we stopped was we didn't go into our interviews with Frank and Sangita yet. That's like right where we were at, right?
Yes. That's
Okay.
what we
Who
stopped.
do you want to go first with the experience, you or me? I'm fine with either.
I can go first, so since you went first last time. So I think, yeah, so I think I mentioned that I got kind of like, okay, actually we didn't talk about like how we applied, right? But
Yeah.
the way it happened for me is that I actually applied for a BDC, business consulting.
Business development consultant. Yeah,
Yes,
BDC.
development consulting, right? And I applied to it just because I thought, it sounds like I could do this, and I don't feel like I'm very technical to like try something else, so I just
For
applied.
people who don't know, that's the entry level sales position at Oracle.
Yeah,
Just like it's what we call them.
exactly. So whatever, I forgot that I applied for that. And then a recruiter reaches out to me and they just basically said that they reviewed my resume and they think that I'm a good match for the solution engineer position, the technical solution engineering position, right? So I was like, okay, I didn't know what a solution engineer was, by the way. I had no idea. And I was kind of worried because I was like, okay, I'm not technical at all. I don't know what this means, but let's see what happens, right? So I did the interview with them. Basically the first time that I got in contact with Oracle, it wasn't an interview. It was just like the recruiter asking me questions like, what classes are you taking? Are you like interviewing with any other people? And at that time, I was interviewing with one more person, with one more, like another company. And they just basically ask you like really like basic questions like your classes, who are you interviewing with, and stuff like that. So then he asked me if I was interested in, scheduling another call. And I said yes. And I think I got an email saying, hey, you're going to have an interview with Brian. And I was like, and he was like, oh, and he's like the top of the program. He said something like that. And I
For
was
our
like,
audio listener, I hope Ramu gets into it because that name just made me raise my eyebrows.
yeah.
Well, you'll see why.
So I was like, okay, yeah, no pressure. No pressure,
So who is Brian for the audience?
He's a director, right?
No,
Well,
he was our vice president, yeah,
vice
of like
president, yes.
our org.
Yes. So
So
the
you
vice
had to interview with him,
president.
yeah.
And he's super nice, by the way. People like he was not like, he was like mean or anything. But when you hear that, like I was very scared already. So anyway, so I start getting ready for my interview. They asked for a technical interview on something that you want, presentation, sorry, on something that you wanted to present on. That was your choice. And then the second interview or presentation was on an Oracle Live Lab. And it's crazy because now that I know Live Labs, I didn't really catch that word of Live Labs. I just went in the website that they sent me and I got ready for the interview. But Live Labs is actually like a really nice platform where we are able to run demos and try Oracle products. So if you guys are interested on that, definitely check it out. But at that time, I didn't know what Live Labs was. I didn't understand anything. I was just following directions and it was working for me. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. But yeah, I was very, very nervous. And then the day of the presentation came and he was super nice. He was based in Denver and I had just moved from Denver to Florida. So we spoke a little bit about our background. He also wasn't a technical person. So I was, that kind of made me feel like, okay, like this could be my place, like maybe I can learn all this thing. Like he didn't go to school to do like computer science or something like that. I think he ended up getting there because he was passionate about technology and stuff like that. But yeah. And then I got my, offer to join Oracle. And I got an offer from the other position too that I was interviewing with. And it was a dilemma for me because, like, I don't know if I can say this, like we can cut it off, but like I was like the other job was offering me more money.
Uh-huh.
Like basically it was offering me like 15K more or 10K more. I don't remember, right? And then we do get commission, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't understand that part that much. I wasn't sure if we were going to get like 100% of the commission or not. And of course, it depends on our.
You weren't sure how, let's say, like close to the word they held their bonus
Exactly.
commitments and targets. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So I was a little confused about that because if that would have, if that was the case, then I would be making around the same or more in Oracle, right?
Mhm.
But I wasn't there like for sure. And I also read a lot of Reddit, you know, um, like posts and stuff
Just
like
yeah,
that.
just like forums about like applying. That's something where I wonder how much recruiting and management understands. Like for the young generation,
It's important.
we like we generally are very wary of any kind of like official corporate wording and posting. And we go to like places like Reddit and Google searches to be like, okay, like what's the real deal about applying for like these positions, especially stuff that is more entry level kind of class of where they take a bunch of young people as a group and like the experience is standardized. Like people pay a lot of attention to that.
100%. And talking about that, like I want to definitely say that I'm happy that I picked Oracle,
Mm-hmm.
um, because actually the other like team, the other company that I was applying for, they were a consulting company and they were also going to put me in the Oracle team, right? That is crazy. So like it was Oracle for me, but they kind of said something that triggered me a little bit because they said something like around the lines of I I would have had to move to Denver, and they said, "Oh, I really hope you have a support system wherever you move because this is a really hard job, like you're going to be traveling a lot." And then when I heard that, I was like, yeah, no, because yeah, I did have my boyfriend, right? But like at the same time, like I don't know if, that just didn't sound good.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I appreciate that they were honest with me, but that was just like a no for me, So I ended up in Oracle because of that. But after reading Reddit stuff, it didn't have like very positive like feedback, about Oracle. And like also like I spoke to you about this TikTok, right? That, this girl posted about, having an interview with Oracle and things not going very well. Like something happened and it sucks because that girl, like she has a lot of followers and, like she does have really good tips about, tech and like the tech industry and everything. So like it sucks that she had a bad experience. And I'm not saying like Oracle is for everyone, but at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like I've had a really good experience, so not like it really depends on the person, right? Like sometimes I hope everyone has a good experience, but like, not you cannot generalize. That's all I'm saying.
It's also like at the end of the day, like one of the biggest takeaways like about my career at Oracle, and I assume this is the case for most, if not all companies, is like the people, like your manager and the people you interact with are going to make it or break your experience. And
Definitely.
like you need to, as much as like company culture and like where you work and like those kind of big lofty values, like they all have their place and they do affect things, but like you still have to like think in prioritizations like, okay, what do I know about like the direct people I'll be interacting with, because that stuff's going to like primarily be your reality that you work with. And like kind
Mhm.
of like you're saying, it's like it is like at the end of the day, it's like you do notice that like some companies tend to, like I don't know, some companies are better than others, some have more problems than others about like culture and all that, but like at the end of the day it is just individuals. And if you just run across like a bad person or someone who like leaves like a not good taste in your mouth, like that's going to sour your experience and kind of lead to stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I definitely don't regret, picking Oracle.
Mhm.
So do you want to go over how you applied and all this stuff, or do you want me to continue with like our first week at work?
Yeah, so I'll go through my interview process. So my whole thing was basically I'd applied to Oracle a couple times before, and it was like all at different stages. Like I applied once in college. That I don't even think I made it through like the filtering on applications, but I also I'm also pretty sure of that. Like, you know how they leave applications up after they kind of like scoop up the people they're interested in for the
Mhm.
first round? I think I was in one of those boats because like a lot of people I knew already got like their first rounds before I even applied. So that was just nothing came of that. Like first round got washed away. And then I think I was still at my first job with this other time I applied. I tell that on this podcast last time. Like basically the gist of that was I was like interviewing for like enterprise resource planning. And because I was looking to get away from, no, I was interviewing for to be a SaaS solution engineer, so software as a service, like the people who sell our software products versus say how Ramu and I were on like a more technical, they call us like platform side. And yeah, I was like interviewing to be a solution engineer on that side of things. And the person I was talking to was really trying to push me towards ERP, enterprise resource planning, and that's like our accounting software. But because I was like leaving insurance and finance, and I was looking to kind of like get away from that industry just so I could like get a fresh palette and see what I liked outside of it. I was like very strong about like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, you'll be great. You have a background in it. And I'm like, it's my background that makes me want to try something new. So like
Mhm.
that ended up not working. So applying for, yeah, so applying for the one that we got into, the whole like quick story of that was COVID happens. I take the one-way flight to Austin. All of this is detailed in my About Me page on telkey.tech if you want to learn about it. But basically during COVID, went down to Austin to stay with my girlfriend at the time. Realized that I really love Austin. I was looking to switch into tech. And I was like applying to a bunch of companies in the tech industry, like working on coding certification, stuff like that. So I got this out of that whole kind of time period and just job and interviewing applying process. I think that my interviews for it was like end of November, beginning of December 2020. That was 2021 at the time. Because did we start in 2020?
No, it was
No,
2020.
yeah, it was 2020 because we started in January 2021. Yeah. So it was like December 2020.
Oh, December 2020. That's when you okay, because
Yeah.
I did my interview. I want to say it was like beginning of October.
Oh, so yours were a lot earlier than mine. Yeah,
Mhm.
because mine was basically like beginning of December was like boom, boom, boom. The recruiter reached out to me. I had a referral from a friend in the company. Um, they kind of like moved me along to the interview process pretty quickly. It was like one conversation with the recruiter
Yep.
and then like straight to final round presentation. I
Yep.
presented to Frank and Sangita, who were the two class of managers for our teams. So basically, for like our class of program for Oracle, they take like 15 or 20 of us. They split us between two teams, and we are kind of like co-raised by Frank and Sangita. And he like divvied us up between like a primary manager, but we also did like a lot of activities with the secondary team. So I believe both of them were my interviewers. And I'm kind of curious what they would say about when we get them on the podcast, because like I think they'd both be like great people to have on.
Mhm.
I'm curious what they'd say about like each of our interviews because I've had so many interactions with them, and I feel like as a presenter, I have grown so much since then that I don't really have like an accurate read on my memory of how I presented with that. But one of the things I do remember is we had like a choice of three different technologies we could do like our lab on to present for the presentation. And the first lab I was doing ended up not working, where like I was like running into like a technical error. And me just being fresh out of like finance world, no background in tech, was like super insecure about that. And I'm like, shoot, this stupid thing's not working. I thought it was my fault. I was like freaking out because I was like 8 hours like into like preparing for this, and I kind of hit like just a brick wall bug that I couldn't like progress past. And I ended up like showing it to my friend who like worked at Oracle. He's like, dude, it's not you. Like the lab's just broken. I'm like, okay, that's good news, but also now I have to start completely over preparing with
Yeah.
another lab. So I pulled a couple like super late caffeinated nights just getting ready for that. But yeah, ultimately, Frank and Sangita liked the presentation, and I did get the offer, and we started in January of 2021. So that's how we got through.
January or February? February 2021.
or no, was it the first week of February, right?
Yeah. It was
Okay, yeah.
February 1st, I think, because like we started like perfectly on a, first day.
Yeah, because I think there was like they sent us stuff in January. Maybe that's why I'm thinking about that. We're getting yeah, because I also left my job, I think like the beginning of January. So that's probably why I associate it with it. But yeah, so that got us to the like beginning of the program. Who was your original manager? Because originally for
Sangeeta.
like the first, okay, Sangeeta was your original one. I
Mhm.
started with Frank. So I was like, I switched over after I think it was like the first 2 weeks or month. They kind of did like a redrafting of the
Mhm.
team, and Sangeeta wanted me for one of her draft picks. So I got scooped over to them.
Yeah, so actually just going back to like the getting ready for the interview. So because I feel like a lot of people are interested in that, but basically, by the way, I had to take my mic off because it doesn't fit. Again, same issue. My laptop doesn't like survive for more than 30 minutes, it looks like. But so when I was going over the live lab, I also ran into something. It was like something minor. Like it didn't really like, I think it was like the last step or something like that, right? And I did also send the recruiter an email and I said something like, like this live lab or this lab, I don't know what I call it, the demo environment, maybe.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was.
You're like the thing that is going to
Yeah,
decide whether or not I get a job is not working, and I'm a little stressed right
exactly.
now.
Exactly. So like I actually sent them screenshots and I just said something like, this didn't look, like the screenshot or something like that or the instructions. And they actually appreciated that. He said like, "Oh, thank you so much for pointing this out. Like, we'll let someone know." And so yeah, like if you guys are like, getting ready for an interview or something, like definitely like talking about these little like bugs or whatever, like it looks good, because like
Yeah.
that you care and like there is someone behind this lab or whatever that cares about that. Trust me, because that's us now.
At least at Oracle, I can't speak for the other companies because like I've definitely applied
Yeah.
to places where like they did not give a shit. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you happen to apply to Oracle and like run into a technical issue, let us know. We'd care about it now. And also
Yep.
completely understandable why you'd have like my mindset where you're just like this scared, like close to
Yeah.
college guy being like, what did I do wrong? But
Right.
like,
Like you might think
yeah.
like you're like, damn, like I'm scared of like looking dumb or stupid because this is not working for me. That's not,
Mhm.
even if like you think that, like we're also thinking as of like we want everything to be intuitive, and easy. So like if it's not working for you or if you're missing something, like that's feedback for like whoever's behind that product to like, think about it.
It is so funny that we went full circle to Live Labs brought us into Oracle, and now like one of our big job things is
It's
being
like
very
that.
actively involved with Live Labs in that team.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like actually, like if you like, we can only talk about Oracle, right? But like if you want to get into Oracle, I maybe some other like companies they also have like a demo environment or a sandbox environment where you can play with their technology. But I think that's like a really good place to start,
Mhm.
like actually learn about the product and stuff like that. But yeah, so like that. So I don't remember which live lab I picked to present, but then the second presentation I did was in a school project that I had where we use Rapid Miner. That was like a machine learning software, but it did, like it did everything for us. So like it wasn't as technical, but I did kind of talk about like the results on it. So I don't know what you decided to pick for like your second presentation. What did you do? Since you didn't have like, like a class or something to like present on.
I think they just gave me one round, if I remember correctly. Like, I wonder if it was because it was later on than you, because I
Okay.
might be wrong, but I'm almost positive all I had was the like the recruiter,
Or
just basic chat, and then like straight to the presentation with Frank and Sangita, like the big one.
okay.
They
Because
did ask, I did have to like fill out this like long form where it was like talk about your like background and technical experience. And I feel like
Yeah,
with the same way as like everyone who's ever filled that form being in college, you're like, how much can I stretch a Python class I took as like
yeah.
proficient in Python? So it was one of those kind of things.
So the thing is for me, like I had like one interview with Brian, right? But like I had to do two presentations in that interview. So you only did one presentation?
There might have been two presentations. I'm just thinking about it as one day because
Yeah, because
I
that's kind of how it looks.
because what was your two presentations? That might help jog my memory.
Right. So yeah, like the Oracle Live Lab and then one other project outside of Oracle. So like in whatever I wanted.
Oh wait, that does sound no, that sounds familiar.
Mhm.
Maybe I did that too. But yeah, I'm just thinking because you had to do it back to back though, right?
Yeah, back to back.
Okay. Yeah,
Same
because like
day.
it just kind of I think it just blended into like the
Into one
one
for
day in
you.
my brain. Yeah. And also like freaked out about the live lab where I'm just like having to worry about the talk about whatever you want is more straightforward. But that actually be I'm kind of curious to go check out. I'm sure I have that saved like somewhere on my
Mhm.
personal computer, that old presentation. I'm curious what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah, no, I've taken a look at mine and I'm like, oh my God, it looks weird. But but yeah, so that takes us to like our first week in and another thing, like the recruitment stuff went really fast for me too. Like they, as soon as I was done, like I think the next day they reached out to me and then the following day I already had like a an offer and I think they gave us like a week to decide. So that was good, like you didn't have to wait as long because like I've heard that there's people that apply and they get a call like 3 months after or 4 months after.
Yeah, I do want to do a PSA for college students who might hear that and that freaked them out a little bit because like there was a lot of people at Boston College where I went who like funneled into Oracle and I'm not privy to that process, but they kind of they kept those applications up pretty long.
Mm.
And I think it's just kind of depending on like when they grab those in batches. So if you're like applying to Oracle and you're like a college student for like an entry level thing and like months go by and you're like, I just heard Zach and Ramu, it went super quick. Like part of that was the timing of they still had the applications open. We were getting close to the start and like they're moving people along for like a mid-year winter class of, which is
Mm.
still that's a little bit more rare because most of the class of programs are for your like standard summer fresh start like out of college people.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess we
So
can,
yeah, first week of
yeah,
class of we started OSPA. Do you remember what OSPA stands for? It's like Oracle
Oracle
Sales and
sales.
Partner Academy.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Those are
exactly.
like our onboarding and kind of like intro Oracle Sales Org 101 people. Like what was your kind of impression of thoughts of like going through that program? Because wasn't that like our first 4 weeks at Oracle?
Yes, it was for
Okay.
first weeks, 4 first weeks at Oracle. And it was, so I had COVID, you remember? Like my first week.
I forgot about that. So were
Yeah.
you out that first week and then you came in the second,
No,
or did you still? No, didn't you like work through it and you told like Frank and Sangita or something, and they're like, "Why are you here?"
like I told them like after like I think like after, way after, that I had
Uh-huh.
COVID. But I honestly was kind of like half zombie, half human because I was like so congested. And like, like I don't know if you've ever had COVID, but you get really tired. So I was so like kind of like sleepy. But anyway, so I remember like we went to like the setup thing, like setting up our computer and all this stuff. And that was with the BDCs too. Actually, you know what? I just remembered. So Oracle had this little thing where it had like two workshops before it started, before like we started working. And I actually got to talk to a BDC girl that ended up in Austin, but it was kind of like a networking experience where there were SEs and BDCs. I don't know, like I never saw anyone from our cohort.
like your specific like two-person cohort or like our team?
Like our team in general. I didn't see anyone from our team, like Sangeeta's or Frank's team.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Basically, we went over like presenting about other people, kind of like a little bit of like a sales training before work started. So, and it was optional. It wasn't like, you were required to do it, but I joined that.
Yeah, I
Um,
was on that call too. I remember like
you were
having
in
one.
the two in
I,
the
I was I was on it's so long ago now. I'm like trying to
yeah
remember the details. Like I was on something like some kind of like pre-call before we actually started. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't remember anyone from our team. But anyway, so yeah, I think I liked it. I liked the 1 month of like training and stuff like that because it helped me kind of like starting that mindset of like caring about presentations and stuff like that. Because I don't know about you, but me, like I did presentations for like every class, at the end of every semester, but I was terrible at presenting. I hated presenting. I didn't want to do anything. Like I did the bare minimum, to be honest, just to get
Mhm.
my grade and like, and that's it, you know?
I was the exact same boat. Like I hated team presentations. I hated individual presentations in college. Like
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I would say Class Up was like really helpful with is even when you're just doing your mock run throughs, like just getting used to presenting in front of people, especially like strangers and those who like you're not as comfortable with. Cause like that's not unless you seek those things out specifically in college and school, you don't really get good practice on it. And like especially in like the corporate business world,
Mhm.
presenting and being able to speak is like one of the most important skills.
Exactly. Yes.
Mhm.
So definitely if you're in college and you're thinking of getting into tech, I don't know, it depends on like the position, right? Like I think software engineers or developers they don't present as much, but like I feel like in Oracle overall a lot of people present, like
Mhm.
they have to and it's a good skill to have. So definitely like take presentations more serious, Um Another thing that I remember a lot, well, like we did a lot of team building activities and talking about ourselves, getting to know each other and stuff like that. But I remember that the first day when everyone was introducing themselves, I feel like the majority were like computer science people, statistics, engineering, and stuff like that. So for me, it kicked hard to like think that, wow, like what am I doing here? Like of course I did say, like I have a master's in information systems, but it was just like nothing like you can imagine, like we kind of learned how to like how the things like the theory part, not really like the application part. So, and it was very like business oriented. So I definitely felt like, like I don't know what I'm doing here, basically.
Yeah, one of the things that OSPA was good for is like I feel like training programs are hard because like with like a lot of the times the training people are they're professional trainers, like they don't do that role. So there is like a little bit of like where do you take like the academia and the concepts of a topic and like where's the blind spot towards like the actual experience. But like one of the things that like I do give OSPA credit for. And like just even in our experience being in solution engineering versus kind of say what I like see now in product management is like it does get you used to the Oracle and like tech sales corporate culture. Like they teach you all the buzzwords and stuff, which I
Mhm.
think is good because at least the way that like I personally apply is like I like getting to know all the kind of like corporate culturally buzzwordy things so I can get like a rhythm for that language of speaking. And then I kind of go like, okay, what do I apply to personal Zach where I don't want to like just sound like some kind of like corporate like duh, 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 just unauthentic saying all the words, but there's like no person behind it. Cause like at least in my experience, like the more human and the more like close to myself I can be while also
Mhm.
professionally being the role that I have to be, the more I'm able to resonate. So getting the presentation reps in were good. getting exposed to kind of the sales vocabulary and all that was also really helpful.
Mhm.
It was interesting because I'm kind of like similar to you. I also had like the everyone's like comp sci type background here,
Mhm.
but there was a part of me that was like, I may not have the like specific technical backgrounds, but most of you are fresh out of college, and
Mhm.
I've been in the working world, and like I've had my soul like grinded down driving an hour and a half each way to my desk job. Like I know kind of like the whole just I know like to suck it up, like do your work and like push yourself hard because you're in the adult world now and there's stakes. So I do feel like kind of having that mindset and just even any kind of professional experience and getting used to having to function in the adult world
Mhm.
was like really helpful going in because it was something that like a lot of our class up people didn't like not to like any fault of their own, but like they didn't have the
Oh,
background or just like perspective to kind of like know that game. You could tell the people who had like prior professional experience.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And honestly, like I didn't even like I wish I would have like approached it that way, because like
Mhm.
I could have also been like, yeah, I've given like cold calls, like I've done cold calls like first thing in the morning, talking to people and everything. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that is a positive, right? Like now that I think about it, so I feel like also class off was really good for people like that because we were kind of like in college, like in Oracle University, trying to learn everything, getting into rhythm and like like I feel like Frank and Sangeeta kind of like held our hand for some time, until
Mhm.
we were like comfortable, I guess, up to a point. So I think it's a really good experience if you're out of college and if you're not like, well, like, it's still like good to like get into the tech industry. I think another thing that I was thinking about now that like you reminded me now that you were talking about, like you working and before getting into Oracle and all that stuff. And is that I felt like I was kind of like old, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm too old to be here. And like, I mean, you're still younger than me, right? But I was like, wow, like they just graduated, they just came out of college and I'm coming in, you know? So I thought that was a little bit weird in my sense too, like part of my insecurity too was that I was like old to this, group.
My whole Oracle career has been like there has been just this shroud of an identity crisis
Yeah.
around my age since I first came here because I'm like I'm too old for the class ofs, but I'm also too young for all these like product managers who want me to watch like Back to the Future or something. Like
Yeah.
so it's that has been like very funny because like I do feel like with the class of like I made some good friends in that program and there were people who were like a little bit older and like because how old was I then? I'm 26 now. It's March of 2023, so that was like 2 years ago. Yes, I was like 24 at the time, and there were like some people who were like a little bit older, but like I do feel like overall it was nice because even though some of the people were younger, like I was able to find like a nice little group of people socially where like I don't feel like I'm speaking to like my sister's age or something for
Yeah.
people who aren't aware my sister's 3 or 4 years younger than me. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a too much younger Gen Z for me, but like
Yeah.
2 years younger I can handle.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like those were like the main things that I remember from like my first introduction, experience to like class off.
Mhm.
Do
Yeah,
you have any other ones?
like I'm just trying to think like because what was your experience like picking your pillar? So I don't know if we gave like a specific definition of solution engineering in
Yeah.
this episode. Like I know we talked about in the last one, but in case you did kind of hop into this one or you forget, basically before Ramu and I started as product managers, the solution engineering position that we were in we were kind of like an in between product management and salespeople. So like your sales rep, they're the ones managing the deal. They generally stay like purely on the sales side of the tech and kind of like high level in the presentations. Solution engineers are your technical experts on the sales call. So like we can like do things from like run through demos, orchestrate labs. We give the more technical presentations. Like we're supposed to be like the technical resource during the sales process. And when we first started, and after we went through like our OSPA training, one of the big things we had to decide was what our pillar would be, which was like what area of tech would we focus on. So, like one of the big positions at Oracle in the solution engineering side of things, in like the platform level of technical depth, is like cloud engineers. Like these are solution engineers who focus on the Oracle cloud infrastructure. We were a licensed on premises organization. So although we still had to learn cloud stuff, our basic area of focus was like on premises, like customers have their own databases, like their own machines, they're running softwares on their own computers type technology. And our choices for what we focused on was either database, analytics, or middleware. Um, so like what was your experience of that?
Um, so to be honest, I wanted to do analytics, but I think
Mm-hmm.
there were only three people that were going to get chosen for analytics. So I kind of felt like I wasn't going to be chosen, so I went for database. And I wanted to do analytics because I feel like that's more of like what I did during my master's program, you know. Um, but for database, actually, I took a database class, and that was like my least favorite class. Like I struggled so much, you know, to like understand everything. So I was a little scared of like picking. It wasn't called database, it was called data management. So
Mm-hmm.
um that's so like I picked data management first of all because it had a database, and I know that Oracle is very known for the database, you know. So I was like, you know, like this might be like a good area for me to like actually, you know, learn, right? And it had a little bit of like data, you know, like managing data and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, like I'm not going to go for analytics, but maybe, you know, I'll get a little bit of like the analytics side, you know, in data management. And and honestly, I don't regret it. I feel like I learned so much and it was useful, you know, since
Mm-hmm.
right now we're like in the database organization anyways, you know.
Yeah. It was funny because for me, when I was looking at it, I knew I didn't want to do analytics just because that was too close to like my business analytics background. I wanted to try something new. I ended up going with middleware, which is basically like focused on our WebLogic product. But I forget why I chose. I remember it was like something that I put a lot of thought into, and I was taking it seriously. And I was like doing the whole like, which like obviously database is like in data management, like super strong product area. And like I was also like looking at our middleware and I'm like, okay, our middleware is like solid stuff too, and all that. It's something that I give a lot of thought to the decision. In retrospect, I forgot what like the deciding factor of choosing middleware for me, which is like kind of ironic that it didn't like matter at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Did you
you
have a
know,
thought on that?
no, like I feel like we spoke about it, and I think you mentioned security.
Oh
Like
yeah, because they wanted because they were I forget how we got on it,
data
but
sets and stuff.
like Frank and Sangita, we like thought it would be good to have me like learn Oracle security.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're gonna have me do like an Oracle security focus, but put me in the middleware pillar because I
Mhm.
can be like really good with like detail oriented stuff. We
Mhm.
thought that could be like a good fit for it. It's funny because like the way things ended up progressing was I kind of became like a hybrid solution engineer between data management and middleware, where like they brought me in to do some like autonomous database presentations, and I was like doing a presentation and project on data safe, which is like some of our database security stuff. So I ended up like becoming a mix of things, which I kind of liked, but it was one of those things that like looking at it, I mean, I know they were definitely, I kind of like fell into some special projects and stuff where I was able to kind of go across those lines. Like I know some people's experience on the class of team was more like stick to your pillar,
Mhm.
but I do kind of like find it funny that like at least my experience was I took it so seriously, like thinking it was like some choosing your house in Harry, like in Hogwarts, like Harry Potter, like, well, do I want to be Gryffindor or Slytherin? And once I make one choice, I'm stuck here forever. So I better choose right. But like in the reality, it ended up being like a much more like fluid experience for me. So that was
Yeah.
like pretty cool. Before
I
we
mean,
go further, I'm
yeah.
calling bathroom break.
Okay.
I really hope this. Okay, we're gonna try to keep it to one bathroom break this episode. I think I had like two or three the last one. I don't want this to become a thing, so we'll
You're
try to get
literally
better.
gonna be called like the bathroom boy.
I
Like
I
legit. Like
hate that, I hate that name so much, but it's so good. I was literally when I was reviewing the podcast episode, the first one, there was one point where I'm like, I am being so fidgety in my chair right now. I'm like, am I okay? And then like 2 seconds later, I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. Can we pause again? And I'm like, damn it. Ugh.
Already.
Okay. I'll
You
be back
can
in a
go.
sec. Okay,
Hello.
I'm back. You still recording and everything?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean,
The bathroom boy is back. After like our first year of recording these, I know we've been like talking about doing a clip channel.
yeah.
We should just do a compilation of like every time I go
The
to the
times
bathroom and just like title it Rise of the Bathroom Boy.
we should change our podcast to bathroom breaks or something.
Our managers would be like, we were really on board of this when it was like about product management, but we're not so sure about the direction of the newest title. Her audience are going to come in thinking it's something completely different. Like, this is not what I thought I was signing up for when I searched for bathroom boy.
Well, the day that you're like being called bathroom boy, that's the day that we know we made it.
If my VP ever just like calls me in for a performance review, he's like, "Okay, bathroom boy," like that's when I'm like, I'm gonna go die now somewhere. Like, ugh. But yeah, so that was basically the beginning of like the class of experience. I don't think we need to do like a month by month play by play on everything,
hmm
but like I do think it could be useful to like brainstorm like what some of the most like impactful moments of going through the class of program were, and we could kind of like zoom into those time periods because like generally the gist was of the program. We started off at Oracle. First month was OSPA. They give us our pillars, and then we start training up on our products. Like we do like team building stuff, presentation practices. We have to put together these like projects and presentations, and we start scheduling calls. And the whole basically thing we're progressing to is after a year on the class of team,
hmm
we graduate from it and they start sprinkling us into like the professional teams across solution engineering. And
Right.
if you go to another org, like teams in that.
Yeah. So I feel like basically I guess the highlights were definitely like that you get to like learn about, your products inside of your pillar. We did most of our presentations in a group, right? So for example, like I started with like um Anthony and Killian, right?
Mhm.
Um and I feel like so like at the beginning, my sense was that we were going to continue to be in that group. I guess we called it cohort, right? Like we were in the same cohort at that time. Um, because we were like preparing to go into sales, like into our sales cycle with that team, right? So like we were getting ready to like, practice with them, present with them and all that stuff. And periodically we would have a presentation that we would have to get ready for and present to like Frank and Sangeeta and maybe other people in our org, right? And they would
Mhm.
give us feedback on things. They would act, it was kind of like a role play where they would act like the customer, and they might be mean or they might be happier or more quiet or something. So I
Those
actually
role plays could be pretty funny. They could be
yeah.
pretty sassy, like during them watching. I remember Sangeeta specifically trying to like put her like mean girl face on for that at points. It was
Yeah, yeah,
pretty
yeah.
funny.
That, yeah. And Frank, like every time I was like, I always was like, oh my God, I hope Frank doesn't ask me anything,
Yeah.
because he was always asking stuff. And actually, like you said, right? Like after, so like the first month I started under Sangeeta's team, right? And then, but we didn't really have like one-on-ones or anything because we were doing OSPA, but then they switched me to Frank's team.
So
And I
you were the reverse of what I did. Yeah. You started on Sangeeta's and went to Frank. I started on Frank and went to Sangeeta.
Exactly,
Mhm.
yes. And then I stayed at Frank's team for a long time actually, until like at the end where again I switched to Sangeeta's team. So I had like both.
Wait, when they switch you over and why? I'm trying to remember this.
I think it ended up being something like Frank would have all of the analytics cohorts, and then
Uh-huh.
Sangeeta would have data management and web logic, I think.
Was this how far into the class of program was this? Because I do remember it didn't affect me, but I
Mhm.
do remember they like were doing a little bit of moving around because of the cohorts.
Yeah, so this was like maybe like 2 months before, 3 months maybe. So like around like October or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
2, 3 months before we left.
yes,
Okay,
before I
not
left.
2, 3 months after we started. Okay,
Yeah, so like I was basically the only girl in Frank's
yeah.
team for a very long time. But I can't complain to be honest because like, everyone was super nice to me and everything. Um, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of girls in his team. I mean, after that, Malia came in, so we were the
Mhm.
only two girls and then I left. So she was the only girl. Um, but I feel like I did get like the good like the good characteristics of on being in both teams, because like I learned a lot from Frank. Like Frank, he would be the person that would ask so many questions during the presentation that I feel like I was already like Frank proof in my
Yeah.
presentations, like since like I did a lot of dry runs with him. I would already kind of know what he could ask me and what he could not ask me. So that was really like, for example, he would always say like whatever is in a slide is like fair game for me to ask. If you don't mention it, like I might ask on it. So like I would know
Mhm.
everything, like every single word, like everything. So
That's definitely a good skill because even now there are times when like I'll get slide decks from other PMs or people,
mhm.
and like the idea is being like, oh, you can grab slides from this if you need it for your own presentations or if you need to use it. And like I'm still now very particular where if there's something I don't understand on the slide, I'm like, I need to make sure I do my research and like I know
Yeah.
it or I'm taking it off because like I don't want to risk that. Like I'm already too busy worrying about what you're asked, like what you want to ask that I'm not like being aware of. I should have the stuff that I'm aware of like under my belt kind of thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that's something that I learned, right? Because sometimes we're like, okay, like whatever is in that slide is in that slide, and I'm going to have to know everything, and like I have to stick to it. But in reality, you can delete it. Like you don't have to stress. Like if you don't know it perfectly, delete it, get rid of it.
Mhm.
I think another good thing that we learned in OSPA was personas, that some like after we moved on, like we didn't really use it as much, but it is important to know that like there's people that are more technical than others. Like if you're talking to a business person, like you don't have to go a lot into like the technical detail, but like at the end of the day we want to solve people's problems. Like as SEs or as product managers, that's our number one thing. And like we're here to help, to like help them with their issues. So sometimes we get too like caught up in like how cool our product is that we forget that we're actually just solving their issue, you know?
Yeah.
So I
I,
think
I,
that's a key point that I learned during like the presentations and stuff.
like, what was your thoughts on your manager dynamic? Because like one of the things that stuck out to me most that I think like really served me well in my career and just like my relationship with Sangeeta
Mm-hmm.
was we're both people who are like very big on trust. We're like kind of like, and it's something I was definitely thinking about more having had professional experience before, but like my whole kind of mindset towards work is like I don't like being micromanaged and
Mm-hmm.
I very much one of the things for me at least where if you want to know if like I'll be effective for you or not is like I need to be able to like real talk with you where if something's on my mind or I have a question or like I'm like working through some kind of problem, like I need to be able to just kind of like word vomit at you and not like worry so
How you're
much
saying
about
something or
yeah, where it's just you basically I'm just talking about like the natural human thing of like building up a repertoire where with your like manager so that when you talk to them, it's like, okay, I know where Zach's coming from. I give him the benefit of a doubt and like I understand his perspective and I trust him. Because like that was like I would say with class of if you want to know how you can just really make or break your experience like being fresh out of college, like do things that shows your manager that you want to be a person that they can trust and then they will trust you and then them knowing that like you don't have to be on their radar for keeping an eye on just for like
yeah.
basic job duties like showing up doing your work is this person lying to me like
Mhm.
y- both your lives will be made so much easier and there's like so much benefits to it just in terms of like not having people on your back but just also knowing when you're communicating with like that person it's like you can act on that information more directly because you don't have to put it through your skepticism filters like so that was like something that was like really impactful for me that I noticed there were like people especially because we did start out in a remote work environment because like we were still middle of COVID there were people who were like abusing the fact that's like hey this is remote work and like your parents aren't here your managers aren't your parents and they're not in your room knowing exactly what you are and aren't doing don't get me wrong you will eventually get caught because if you're not putting the time in it's like you're not as crafty as like you think you're going to be but just like knowing that like your manager didn't have to like waste time and energy playing those games with you like I do think puts you in like a really good perspective.
Yeah, I feel like there's been like a switch in like the way at least like our generation thinks about how to work in general, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like for example, like I think that now we try to kind of be more real, you know, like in a sense of like we're not like just acting like oh, like I'm in my workspace, I shouldn't act like this, I shouldn't be myself, I should, you know, talk a certain way, or like, yeah, like there is a place to do that, right? Like if you're talking to a customer or someone like that, you know, you of course have to act professional. I'm not saying that swearing or like, you know, using like bad language is the right way, even with your manager, you know, but I do think that keeping it honest, you know, and like just feeling comfortable with your manager because sometimes like we forget that we're humans, you know, at work, or like maybe that's not seen as like the right thing to do or like the right way to like interact with your team or your manager or whatever, right? But like I feel like I've been really lucky to like, for example, like with Frank and Sangeeta, I was always able to be myself in the sense of like I could tell them how I felt, or for example, like um I remember when I was like switching positions, right? And I was talking to Frank and Sangeeta, like I met with both of them, you know, and I told them what was worrying me, what I didn't understand, you know, like as a first generation college student, you know, like first person to like, you know, get a job in corporate America and all that stuff. Like there was a lot of things that I didn't know exactly how to handle, right? So like being able to tell them that, you know, was something like, you know, like it makes me feel like okay, I'm comfortable and I'm in a safe place to like share my insecurities, you know. And I feel like that brings trust between you and your manager, right? Because they like you might think that just because you're remote, they don't know like if you're working or not, but they know, like I don't know how, but they know.
Yeah, basically, like your relationship with your manager is kind of like a relationship of a spouse. Like they're eventually they're gonna find out,
Yeah.
and there is definitely like this is one of the things where like I've been lucky that at least like in my professional life I've had good people that I've like worked for, but like one of the things that I've just seen from other people who I'm friends with or just hearing stories is
Mhm.
it's very easy, especially when you're young, to have toxic experience, just like with relationships, like to have toxic experiences with someone and just kind of go like, this is the norm. This is what I take as a person, and this is what I expect. And if you kind of like have that attitude, then when you look for your next job, you're not going to kind of like put your foot down for like at the prospect of working for toxic people. It's just like, oh, like I have to suck it up. It's part of my job. I got to make a living. It's called work, not fun for a reason. But like one of the things that I learned from just both Frank and Sangita, like obviously
Mhm.
most of my interaction was with Sangita, but like Frank was also like a huge mentor for me, is
Mhm.
just the importance of that healthy manager relationship. And because I kind of like from my experience with both of them, gave myself this expectation of like, I know I'm a hard worker. I'm willing to be a good person and like hold myself to like moral values with them. I deserve to be working with someone who does the same to me.
Exactly.
And like, I think it's because of that like mindset that's like, I got lucky with getting Jeff. And it's not even just luck. It's like people kind of like hold that self-esteem and just sense of value and responsibility because it's not just what can they do for me, it's what do I offer for them.
Mhm.
People are attracted to that and look for more of that, so that's how you kind of build your career and keep going, is make yourself the person that your manager wants on their team, and then you
Exactly.
have the bargaining power to look for the manager who deserves you as an employee and like keep following that positive energy
Mhm.
into like further and further interactions along your career, because that is like one of the most, I would say, dangerous upward or downward spirals, because whether you're looking to something optimistically and positively or negatively, like those energies feed further in their own respective direction. Like once you hit like one bad person, you go downhill, it is very easy to spiral and go, well, if they don't give a shit about me, I'm not going to care about my job and I'm going to do the bare
Exactly.
minimum. The problem with that though is you think you're hurting them, but then you go,
Putting yourself
shoot,
through.
I'm looking for a new job and I don't have as much as to show for as I could have. So you don't get as good of job positions in the future. And the trend just continues. Like that's like one of those big fears in my mind, at least, that I always keep in the back of my head. Like why you want to make sure you kind of like hold yourself to a standard.
So, one of like the talks that I like appreciate the most, and like of course, like, I haven't told this to anyone, because like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like we don't talk about things like that normally, right? But um I don't know if you remember but one time Sangeeta invited Kay to talk to us like the first
I
time.
was hoping we would talk about this. Yeah, we need to go into
Yeah.
this topic.
Because like I always had this perspective that like like if you're at work, like you don't have to talk about your personal life, like that has nothing to do with like your work life. You have to be a certain way, like I don't know, like I don't know if this is something that like I got from college, or I don't know where I got this from, but it was just a thing for me, like I would go to work, I would not talk about my personal life, I would not
Mm-hmm.
complain about anything, like I just like focus at work, doing work stuff, and I only spoke about work stuff, right? But of course, like we are humans, right? Like how do we build connections, right? Like for example, I'm a person that I care about people, right? Like if you tell me like, hey, I have a problem, like I'm gonna try to solve your problem. Like, even if it's not my problem, just like give you like a solution somehow, or like
Mm-hmm.
at least like check on you to make sure that you're fine, right? And Kay was talking about how like, like she, for example, every time she talks to someone, she would like remember something that they told her, and then like in the next conversation bring it up, and like build that connection, right? Like, and how like important networking is and stuff like that, right? So sometimes like, yeah, like, networking is a great thing to do, right? Like overall, right? But sometimes you don't click with people. Like for example, like I feel like I didn't do this with my first mentor that they like assigned me to, so like I feel like we weren't able to connect as much, compared to like my adopted mentor that was David, that was Killian's and Thea's.
David Start,
No, now.
or oh, David Now. Yeah.
Yes.
For a second when you said now, I thought you meant like
No,
the David
but
Now. I'm
now.
like, but which David? No, I know you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so like with him, I connected like really well, right? Like, I feel like I reached out to him a lot. He would reach out to me a lot, So like, I don't know, like it's important to bring those personal connections, like, I know like for example with Sangeeta, like I'll talk to her about like her life, she will ask me about my life, she will ask me how everything is going. Like those little things do matter, because we are in a work environment, but we are also humans, and like, um I feel like after that, like first presentation and talking, like how she was talking about how she approached everything, like it wasn't only that, like there was a lot of things that, she made me think about, like, okay, like maybe I should bring my authentic Ramu into like,
Mhm.
play, so,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I feel like I continue to do that. And let's say that if in the future, hopefully I don't get a manager or a team that, don't like that authenticity of Ramu, then, like we might not be able to work together. You know what I'm saying? Like it might be a little more uncomfortable for me, but like again, with this team, like I feel like I'm very like comfortable to be able to talk about, like something personal, if anything, or like ask them how they're doing, or I don't know. Like I feel like I can show that I care, because that's something important to me as a person,
Yeah. And like there are two topics that you touched on there that I want to go into. The first one is I had like the same exact experience with my mentor, where the first person I was assigned, and this is there was something from this that I really noticed. And my girlfriend's a manager, so it's something that I've mentioned with her, and it was just like such a little thread I picked up on. So my first mentor, like really nice person, and I would say the conversations went well, but for me, mentorship has always been something I've taken like very seriously throughout my whole life. Like I can point to very specific people in high school, college, etc., who have had an impact on me, and like because of it, I've always had like a very focused perspective and like way I like treat mentorship. So there was like something about that where I'm like, this person's great, but like I don't know, I didn't feel the kind of
connection or
connection or frequency that I wanted. And Sangeeta was like asking, she was like checking in, she's like, hey, like how are things with your mentor? And I was like talking about it. And she's like, would you like to like get a new one? And like I paused for a second and I don't remember her exact words, but she said something reassuring to whole like, hey, like it's not I
it's
feel like
okay.
there's in this culture, there's like such a idea of I think it's like we put ourselves out there so much and everything is like there's so many interactions we have to keep track of, and there's a lot of like in and out people of your life. Like we're afraid of like rejection. And because of that, we're also afraid of rejecting other people because it goes as like this insecurity of like, we don't like being rejected because we go, what's wrong with me? And we also go, I don't like rejecting other people because you're like, I don't want them to think I think something's wrong with them. So that was the kind of like fear in my mind. Like thinking is like, hey, like it's chill if you and your mentor like aren't as close as possible. Like this is supposed to be like a long-term resource for you. So like it's not a testament to them. So I'm like, okay, like cool. And I'm like, yeah, like I do think that it might be good to like see what other options are there. And the mentor that I got matched with after Ronald Mayfield, he's like this super impressive, like distinguished master principal, one of like the highest enterprise architects at Oracle. Enterprise architect is like a solutions engineer, except for rather focusing on one technology, you get brought in to do these like huge overarching plans and roadmaps of for companies of like how not just one tech, but like a suite of our technologies can all work together and transform your entire business process and like save you so much money and costs and stuff. Like that's what he does. And like Ron's still someone who I meet with now, like monthly. One of the most like impactful resources, like exactly what I need. And I've had like such a good relationship with him. But like if I hadn't gone over my kind of like fear of, oh, what would this say socially or just potentially like job politically about switching? I'm just like, what do I think is best for me? It's
Mhm.
led to something just like really helpful. So I do, that's something where like, especially in early career, like a good skill to learn is you're going to meet like a lot of people and don't take it personally if you don't jive with everyone you meet, and don't like beat yourself up or like get weird or over apology if you don't like mix perfectly well with like other people and say like things don't end up being the most like tight relationship ever, just because like it's kind of just average good people rules. Just be respectful, treat people well, and kind of be graceful in those like entrances and exits, and you don't have to feel bad about say like stuff not working out. But like the second thing I wanted to get to, because this was like extra important, that first meeting with Kay, because Kay was a mentor for Sangeeta, and um I'm not sure how like much you interact with like Kay now, but like she's definitely been like a huge mentor in my career.
Mhm.
One of the things that struck me most about Kay, where I'm like, I need to pay attention to this woman in my career, is that authenticity.
Yep.
Where like my whole life, I think I can't pinpoint what exactly led to this, but it's just not whether it was a combination of like upbringing, expectations, school system, my own personality, etc. I always, and I think there is something to do with the way that we kind of put pressure on kids, where it's like if you're not perfect and get all A's and get into the top Ivies, like there's just this feel of like failing, and if you mess up like one spot, it all comes crumbling down. But like basically, like early in 20s, I had this perspective of I have to become someone, and that to be professional and successful, you have to like be taken seriously and be a business person.
Mhm.
And I think part of it was the ecosystem I was exposed to in college, which is investment banking, management consulting, high finance, because in a lot of ways, it's like, yeah, you show up to work and there's a level of like you're a suit and tie professional that is especially strict for those areas.
Mhm.
At least with tech and me, particularly, like one of the things I've learned from Kay is the power of authenticity, where it's like, I'm not good at putting like fronts up or feeling like I have to kind of worry about the version of Zach I am. And
Mhm.
like doing those kind of things really exhaust me. So it's like kind of like one of the things about like me switching into tech was like I need to pursue, like I switched away from the mindset of I need to get a job and just find a way to provide for myself and take care of myself, to like I moved up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of like, okay, I have my job, I have an income, I have a little bit of experience I can point to. What would I find personally fulfilling? Because the more I've moved closer to that authenticity, the more I've like unlocked this energy, and seeing how Kay's not afraid of her energy. Here's someone who goes like, look, it's like I will do my job awesome, but I'm not afraid to take like the raw personal human that's going to rub people the wrong way sometimes,
Right.
and like worry too much about offending someone. Like I'm going to be Kay Malcolm with all of the good and the bad, the like the ups and the downs, the like I am who I am, I don't need to explain myself to you kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like that just like struck me as like, whoa. And it was
Yep.
like that kind of energy that I'm like, I want to learn from this and
Yep.
be able to become the most authentic version of myself. Cause like I kind of got the inkling when I heard from that. I'm like, what what has it been up until this point where there's just been this kind of general malaise and feeling a bit like detached from your career. And I
Mhm.
think it was like it did have to do with this thing of like, I can't be Zach, I have to be this thing. So it's like, well, the thing I have to be for work, I'll give it the energy it needs. But because I can't be myself, my work, it's like kind of like holding yourself back. But like, just kind of as we see now, Jeff has been super supportive for me being my authentic self. Kay obviously has. And I would say the database PM org is like very good about that. And there are so many like brilliant, smart, creative, like all over the place people with so many personalities. And like, if I didn't feel supported and like I was able to keep starting to grow into the authentic Zach, I wouldn't have like done Telky Tech. I wouldn't have started this podcast with you because I would go like, well, I'm afraid of putting myself out there and it not being quote unquote allowed. So it's like there's something to Kay I saw there where I'm starting to see it flourish in my own life now where it's like that kind of authentic self. That's not something to be afraid of. It's like that's the source of like your fire and energy. It's like, especially if you're going to do something creative in your work, it's kind of impossible to do that without tapping into that like creative personal energy.
Yep. No, I literally like 100% agree with all of that. And I
Mhm.
think that like for me, that talk like was kind of like saying something like, like for example, like I feel like when I'm not able to be myself, I feel uncomfortable, like
Yeah.
I barely talk. Like I'm a very quiet person. Like if you see me not talking, that's like me saying I'm not comfortable,
We're both the same way in that where it's like
Yeah.
we will both shut down if it could even be an environment where we could be okay being our authentic self, but it's like if we have any kind of like our threat detection system goes off of us being authentic here could get us in trouble, we'll just shut down because it's like it's not worth the risk kind of thing. And I think that's something like a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, and like not only that, but like I mean, you said it could have been like the way, like what you were around before you came into Oracle or like heard that talk. For me, it's the same way. Like, no one tells you you can be your authentic self, People
Yeah.
tell you like, oh, you need to dress this way. Like, for example, if you were to tell me that I would be sitting in my couch right now talking to you, in a let's say work environment, even though this is not, with this shirt, like I would have been like, that's impossible. Like this is work. You know what I mean? Like for me,
Yeah.
talking to you would have been like work, But then now someone comes, with like a bigger position than yours, and tells you, hey, be your authentic self. Like it's okay, like you should be this way, because like why not, That's like something that was like, wow, like I'm doing something wrong,
Yeah. And like, and here's the thing, this is the kicker behind of all of it. It's like it may seem like there's these like malicious forces out there being like, oh, don't be your authentic self. A lot of the time, it's not people saying don't be your authentic self. It's the people who care about you and are close to you who
Mhm.
are worried about you. Are like, don't take
Yep.
any risks too crazy. Like, you have a good thing going, don't blow it. It's like,
Yep.
it's that kind of stuff where it's not the message they want to get across, but it's
No.
how like literally everyone perceives it. You just go like, because the way you take it is like, I should be scared. And what do you do when you're scared? You close up. You like, you take like part of yourself and you kind of put that like wall of security around it. And that's what like brings you into your more quiet, less open, less able to kind of like share, explore, create like types of modes that you need to like do what we do.
100%. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So basically, since then, I've tried my best because at the same time, like it takes time, right? To like rewire yourself to be more open to things or to actually speak up, right? Like before, I didn't really like share my opinions because I was like, I'm not an expert in here, like why am I going to like, bring my
Also,
opinion?
yeah, let's be completely honest. Sharing your opinions in like this day and age, like we all
Yeah.
see what happens to people on the internet. That's a dangerous game.
I know exactly. Like even doing this podcast, right? Like I told
Uh-huh.
you, right? Like I kind of told you, like like are we fine with like doing it unedited, like because like I'm wired to be worried about everything I say, Of course, especially in the internet, right? But
Yeah.
like those are things that I'm starting to like rewire, but this was like my wake up call, like that talk was my wake up call.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think overall, like those manager interactions and everything, if you show yourself as the person that you are, and if you're a good fit to your team, like everything should be fine, like you shouldn't be scared to be you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something else where it's like the good fit's important, and especially if you have that like overachiever mindset from school of you're
Mhm.
not worried about being a good fit. You just think in terms of like, is this something I can get into? Yes or no? If not, why am I not good enough? Like that's a very easy default, but it's like, no, it's like as you get older, it's like you have strengths and weaknesses and personalities and like your own personal frequencies. Like this is just as much about finding harmony in the group you're joining because like every team group company they got their own like music and rhythm they're going to, and you can both be good musicians but you have to like be in that same beat that they're going, otherwise things aren't going to work. And that's not something that like we teach people enough where it's like it's very much like, oh, there are these exclusive clubs that you got to get into, like the top schools, the top companies, and if you're not there, you got to work to get there because of like the rat race, and you don't want to be a failure and all that stuff, and like blah blah blah. But like the real picture is, it's much more intricate and complex than that,
Mhm.
and this isn't some straightforward, clear cut path where you follow these instructions that other people tell you and like
You
you
get
you
there.
and you get to the finish line that you're promised because like let's be honest, like a lot of there will be people and there will be paths that are clear cut and straightforward, but they tend not to be the most fulfilling. And just like look back at like on your own life and like all those moments that you didn't expect and couldn't have predicted, like that's part of the future too. So yeah, I think we've been going for a while. One last thing I want to mention is after that conversation with Kay, where she came and spoke to our team,
Mhm.
I like reached out to her and had an individual conversation with her. She shared her story in that, and I don't want to get into this podcast, but I know one of the things we were talking about is like having guests in the future. We're
Mhm.
both lucky because we have relationships with people all across Oracle. So
Mhm.
like I think it'd be like not only just good to get like guests in like Jeff and Kay and like potentially your manager and stuff, but also people from like other orgs and groups. But Kay is definitely one of the people I would like to get on the show and especially kind of tell her story, like her big DBA one from the beginning of her
Yeah,
career, if she's like interested in it, because that's like a very powerful story. But yeah,
yeah,
do we want to like end it here and then we can just continue
yeah.
the rest of the solution engineering story and kind of how we got into PM next time?
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. I like this like structure. I like it that we're not say going like, oh, we have to cover all this
Yeah,
territory in like each specific episode. We're like, how much time do we want to spend going? And we're kind of like going with the process.
yeah.
So like a
It's
good
like
flow so
natural.
far. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So I think that's episode 2 of Technically Managing. Thank you all for being here today and looking forward to the next one.
yeah. Have a good day, everyone.